This is the sound of refusing to give in. It's leaving nothing to chance. Searching relentlessly for the right, the only treatment option that will keep a heart beating. Fortunately, the Christ Hospital Health Network has groundbreaking treatment options unavailable anywhere else in the country, developed with help from our own physicians. That's what makes us Greater Cincinnati's Heart Hospital and one of the top heart hospitals in the world. The Christ Hospital Health Network, everything it takes.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 786, Pound This Live, all about macros and nutrition with Sarah from Team Fit With Me.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
What up, friends? I am so excited for you to listen to this podcast today. So this happened at my Pound This Party, my live podcast health and wellness event that happened on my 40th birthday at the beginning of August. So I'm going to have a couple episodes that were recorded live there. This is from Sarah from Team Fit With Me. Lots of great information. I thought this was so cool because we could do a live Q&A. So, I mean, we're going to talk all things macros and nutrition. And just a heads up, if you hear this and you love Sarah and you want to hire Sarah, you can absolutely hire her as your virtual health coach, and you can save 10% off month one of all packages and plans when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis. But Sarah is amazing, which you're going to hear in this episode. And Sarah and I were actually having a conversation this week, because Sarah is also my health coach, about how now I am getting my meal prep from Clean Eats here in Newport in Cincinnati. And she's like, dang, I am jealous. I want some of this meal prep because it's absolutely amazing. And I will say it's nice to have a break from me meal prepping. I've been meal prepping almost a decade now, to have someone else cook for me. And the food is absolutely amazing. So here in Cincinnati, I go online, I order cleaneats.com. And I'm doing 21 meals a week. And then I go to Newport, which is my closest location, and pick up all of my meals. And this week has been the first week that I completely did that, incorporated that as my meal prep. And it was amazing. I just ate some of my breakfast this morning and it was delicious. So if you're in Cincinnati, Newport is closest to me. There's also a Clean Eats in Westchester. So there's that option too. So not only can you get the fresh meal prep, you can go in and there's like an entire wall of frozen choices. There's lots of options to pick up meal prep there, and there's a cafe on the spot. So if you're looking to make healthier choices, try Clean Eats out, because it has been very helpful for me. And Sarah, as a health coach, as my health coach, also 2 thumbs up, sign of approval of like, yeah, this is awesome. Whatever makes your life easier, obliterate some of the stress, go for it, which we're going to talk about now in this episode. So here we go. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I'm Amanda Valentine. Joining me, I don't even know how many podcasts we've done together. Sarah, I'm not going to attempt your last name.
Fucinari.
There you go.
You got my maiden name down. I changed it on you.
I know, right? You make life more difficult for me. So I'm so excited that you could fly from Phoenix to Cincinnati to be a part of this event. And I think, and I know that if you've listened to a lot of my podcasts, you've probably heard me share this, but it's just like, again, this podcast is so near and dear to my heart, and how, like, just, again, the connections and crazy things of, like, how people have come together from it, I think is absolutely amazing. So when I started the podcast in 2018, I worked with Zeb over at the New Ethics table. Go ask him to flex for you. Take his shirt off. If you want to see Zeb with his shirt off, just follow him on Instagram. I was introduced to Zeb because I was in the kitchen talking to somebody about nutrition, and they're like, oh, I'm surprised he didn't jump in on that conversation. I'm like, I don't know who that dude is. She's like, oh, he's a personal trainer. I'm like, oh, a personal trainer works at the radio station? That's cool. So then she sent us an email introduction, and I'm like, hey, I just started this podcast. Do you want to come on the podcast with me? So then I met Zeb, and then he's like, hey, I know these people at New Ethics. That could be on your podcast? I'm like, okay, that sounds awesome. So Jason Theobald, he was a guest on my podcast, and he talked about, oh man, what was the topic he did from the episode that you listened to? I think it was eating for your body type.
Yes, it was.
Wow,
good memory.
Right?
What number podcast was that?
Oh God, I don't know.
Digits,
It was
maybe.
early on.
Yeah.
It was probably maybe in the 20s or something. But several months later, he came back in as a guest, and he's like, you know that this girl from Denver hired me from listening to your podcast, right? And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I got her eating more, and she's losing weight. And I'm like, shut up. That's like the coolest thing I've ever heard of. Who is she? And then we became connected. And from there, to watch kind of like your journey, which I'll let you tell here, of like watching like where that's kind of how like we were introduced to each other, to watch you from, you know, becoming your own health coach and helping other people is just like, it's just so amazing. It's like the coolest story, and I'm so glad that I could be a part of it.
I mean, you're amazing. Your podcast literally changed my life and the trajectory of my life, which is insane. And it's so cool that we're sitting here celebrating your birthday. This is like, yes, girl. This is awesome.
Thank you. So tell me from that experience for you, like once you hired Jason, so you heard him on the podcast, you resonated with that episode, which is so amazing, which is why I think is awesome to have so many people on the podcast. If like everybody can find their person, like, oh, there's something they said means something to me, maybe I can connect with them and work with them. So kind of start with like working with him as having a coach, like how did that go to where you are now?
Well, I mean, before working with Jason, I struggled forever, and I did every extreme thing that there was. I even went to the extreme of having weight loss surgery and was under the impression that that was going to be the cure for me. And I found myself struggling yet again, which is when I found Jason on your podcast. And I was like loosely looking for somebody, but with all of the Insta coaches of the world, it was, you know, a little bit scary to invest because I knew that it wasn't all quality. And I really liked what he had to say, and so that's why I hired him. And, you know, he took a really like deep dive into internal health and the science piece of it. You know, there was nothing gimmicky about it, which is why I reached out and kind of just like I hired him, and I was like, this is the last thing I'm going to do, like truly last, and then I'm done. This is it. And just the approach that he took as far as focusing on the education and having everything really individualized for me, it like just was a game changer for me. I mean, it changed my whole outlook on my journey, on how I feel about myself, how I look as well, and just all I wanted to do was tell people about it. So kind of just wanted to go around and say, like, guys, this doesn't have to suck so much. Like, it doesn't have to come from a place of hating yourself. It can come from a place of, you know, adding to your life and, you know, just educating yourself and making good choices. And so I just started helping people, like literally, just anybody that wanted to hear me talk about it, because all I wanted to do was I just became obsessed with the knowledge. And then I started like doing it as a little side hustle. It was like, I should probably start charging. It's time. And I was still traveling as a national rep every week. And then it got to the point that I couldn't do it anymore. And I think that maybe you and I recorded the first podcast, like when I was still hustling both careers.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that was when, and then a couple of years ago, it was like, okay, it's time. And it's turned into such an awesome, beautiful thing. And there's so many people here that have had such an impact on my life. And I'm so proud to be here and to be a part of this.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And what's so amazing is through this is like you have become this master of like macros and nutrition, and in that deep dive science part, which my brain does not go to at all. So it's like, again, everybody has their own journey with food. And I think that when it comes up, because, you know, the conversation of like calories and macros and counting and all that stuff comes up so much when you think of like weight loss and nutrition, and it seems so scary and hard to think of that's why I kind of want to have this conversation of just like just an understanding of like how you're eating to nourish your body and what those things sort of mean, because it does go into hormonal health and all of these things. I mean, the rabbit hole is deep. Yeah. If you want to go there and you want to understand like how the foods you're eating are affecting your body, especially if you have if you have like PCOS or you're dealing with like I have Hashimoto's disease, and I am not the greatest at eating towards that. But you know,
it's a process.
You know where you're at. But it's like that I love that became from something of where it's the background. It's not like, oh, I just kind of was born with this knowledge, I went to school for this. It's like you've lived through it, you tried everything, you found what worked for you, and you did that deep dive, and you have this deep knowledge of just nutrition and food. And now you want to share it. So I think that, I guess just to keep it simple, because again, like macros are a confusing thing. What does that even mean? I was asked that question just a week ago. Like, when you're saying that word, what does that word mean, and why do I need to care about that word?
Okay, macronutrients, protein, carbs, fats. So that's our podcast.
We're done. Bye, guys. Well, I think then you go into like, well, the difference between a macronutrient and a micronutrient.
Yeah, and then we have macros, and then we have the redheaded stepchild of alcohol, the fourth macro, as we call it. But it is important to have a balance of all of the things, and then a little bit of that fourth thing too from time to time is absolutely okay.
Yeah, and I think that like understanding how to like counting them and like understanding how like kind of fits in, or I think it's just becoming very balanced, is such a good learning tool, because it is of like when you're thinking of those carbs, proteins, fats, in like you're looking at a plate and you're eating, of like you want to have a certain balance of those. So it's like, oh yeah, you could just eat carbs, which I could totally do all day, every day.
I mean, it's your birthday. Go for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't worry, I am. That it's one of those things of like, oh, I didn't realize that I was having a big bowl of pasta, which again, that's fine, but like, oh, but I wasn't including any protein in that. I wasn't including maybe a good healthy fat onto that of like, oh, how this meal could serve me better, whether your goal is weight loss or just to be general healthy, or just to be like not hungry 2 seconds, or not to just feel overly bloated and full and gross and lethargic. Like there's just a million reasons why food can just help you. And even going back to Lene of like your skincare, of like how your food plays into all of these different things. Of like, so how can you generally, every time you eat, get a good balance of those? So what would you recommend? Again, like we're going to bring up, so the lunch today is going to include roasted vegetables, hummus, 2 salad options, 6 pizza options, and a cheesecake if you want it. So if we're going to look at lunch and we want to have a good balance of macros, what would that look like?
So if we're looking at today's lunch, I think we're a little short on protein options, but that doesn't mean that you're just like, okay, well, not going to hit my protein today. It's all about finding balance within your day. And like, obviously, in a perfectly macro scientific way, we would have an equal part of protein, carbs, and fats spread through all of our meals. But real life is not that way. So sometimes we do have to find some balance there. And so I would be definitely filling up your plate with lots of vegetables to make sure that you have the volume there, some micronutrients there, as we were talking about. You'll have a fat source, likely with the salad dressing, maybe some of the cheese on the pizza. I'm not sure what's going to be on the pizza. Maybe
there's a
some
wide
veggies
variety
on
of
some
pizza.
I don't
Yes.
know. And then you'll have some carbohydrates from pizza, veggies. So you can still build a somewhat balanced plate there. I don't know what the protein options are, but I'm sure there's protein on some of the pizza, right? Something
yes.
like that. So then you can build out your plate that way. But always, focusing on veggies, especially when you're dining out, is a really easy tip to make sure that you're feeling full, and then you won't feel like you're missing out when you have a little bit of the other things that are maybe a little bit more calorie dense. So you can have that balance on your plate. And then, when you're home, you'll have a different kind of meal. But every time that I would never want somebody to like miss out on social situations or hide at home to stick to their diet, because you don't have to do that. You can be flexible, and that's where I find a lot of value in macros, is that the base, I know it's scary if you haven't done it before, because it is like math, and that's, and
math sucks.
And then it turns into like Tetris. There's like a lot going on there. But the root of what macro counting is it is nutrition education. It's just teaching you what is on your plate so that you can learn how to balance your plate. And then be flexible in situations like this, and so that you can still be social and enjoy your life, because this should always be a part of your life, not your whole life, if you want this to be a sustainable thing. And, I know some people have brought food with them, and that's okay too, and there'll be different stages of your journey as well, There have been times where I have brought my meals to a business dinner. I'm not at a stage in my journey where I have to do that anymore, but or that I want to do that right now. It doesn't really align with what my goals are right now. But there's all different seasons to this, and there's a lot of different strategies and tools that you can use to find that flexibility and that balance and that level of enjoyment. Because, by the way, it's super important that you enjoy your nutrition plan, whatever it is. If you have any expectation of sticking to it, you got to have that level of enjoyment. I know everybody wants this, like, especially when you're feeling so motivated to like get started on your journey. You want this perfect plan that's like mapped out for you. And I help lots of people with meal plans, and I'm happy to do it. But the reason I don't give out generic meal plans is because you have to like the things you're eating. Like, you have to enjoy this.
Well, food is amazing, and food is a celebration. Like, food is obviously an important part of life. It's a necessity, but it's also joy-giving and amazing, and you don't want to be like...
And literally, like, serotonin, endorphins, like, these are all things that happen from food. It's important, and I think that like finding that balance is so essential if you want to be successful in your weight loss, health, hormone optimization, gut healing journey, whatever it is that you're working on now. You have to still like your plan, and there has to be flexibility within that.
Yeah, I think that the key out of that is just live in the gray area. Of like that's life. Life is the gray area. Like even using the example of this event, like I chose from a catering menu.
Right.
Like it's like I didn't have full, like I'm not in here cooking for everybody and taking everybody's order. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that's still like, but that's the gray area of like you have what you're working with. If you're going, you go to a birthday party, you go to a wedding, you go to like whatever. It's like I'm a meal prepper and I typically have my own control over what I'm doing. And that's great, but that's not life all the time. Like that can be a certain amount of time. And it's just like understanding how, I think so much of like how you feel around food and realizing those things like in that gray area. Is that gray area uncomfortable or do you thrive in it? And it's like everybody is so on their own journey. And I think everybody kind of wants to hop on you or tell you on the internet how you should live your life or how you should eat. And, oh, you want to look like this? Well, you better eat like this and you better exercise like this. And I do this, so this works for me. So it has to work for you. And it just becomes like noise and chaos. And I think it's so hard of it is just finding out, again, like you're saying, eating what you like, moving how like that serves you, and like really tuning into like, and playing off of like your life and how your life is and how do you fuel yourself and eat and move according to the life that you want to live. And it's a hard place to get to.
But I think you also need to own the fact that you have a choice in every situation. And that was a big part of your journey, was you deciding in the beginning that, I'm going to make the best choice in every situation that's presented to me. See, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. And I think that's something that, we always need to be cognizant of because, I think that a lot of us have that all in, all out mindset.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there.
On the diet, off the diet mindset. But that it's not about that. It's about being consistent and about making the best choice in every situation. As you hit the nail on the head with that very early on.
Yeah.
And just knowing that you have the power to make that choice and many choices throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so much helpful to make those choices when you're armed with information. Like you just said, like macros are information. Like you're learning about those things. And like that was a whole huge process for me. Like I didn't know what macros were. I didn't know what I was eating. I knew when I did Weight Watchers, I just knew that they had a box of cakes and they were 1 point. That meant I could eat like 20 of them. And so like it's just like I didn't piece those things together. I didn't have the knowledge of those things, but it turned into like, okay, I understand what this is and how this fits and works for me. So it's like I can make the best decision for me based on having a knowledge base of these things and what's best for me of like who I want to be and what makes me feel good. And so much of like I've talked about again on the podcast so many times of especially around food, because I think things get centered around food a lot. Like we need it to live.
We love food here.
Right? Of like, how do I feel on the other side of this decision of like, yeah, I could like house a whole deep dish pizza, but like, am I going to feel like, ooh,
how
afterwards?
adult of you to think of the consequences.
Yeah, so it's like, again, like, how am I going to feel on the other side of this? Am I going to feel shame? Am I going to feel terrible about myself, like mentally? Am I going to physically feel awful and kind of be shut out the rest of the day? Like, okay, then I have a choice to make. And then I think that's where it is. But I'm armed also not only with the knowledge of nutrition, but armed with the knowledge of like my life existence of like, I've made this choice before. How did I feel on the other side of it? And that's helped me through so much through like binge eating and everything too, of just like, there's so many different kinds of disordered eating, and it's so hard to break those sort of patterns because they were usually put in place to protect you in some sort of way. They were there to help you manage an emotional situation or something that's going on in your brain. And so it's really hard to piece those things and be like, okay, well, how can am I binge eating my macros? Instead of just binge eating like, 2 family-sized bags of chips. And so much of it is, I think, just pausing and thinking about it. So having the knowledge of like where you've actually come from for yourself and the knowledge of actual food. And I mean, how hard was that? I mean, obviously you tried so many different diets and going through weight loss surgery, like to just even understand the knowledge of like what food is bringing you.
Right. And it's crazy to think that even after all the diets, even after the weight loss surgery, even after the alleged guidance that your weight loss surgery team provides, which now I've worked with hundreds of weight loss surgery patients, and it's just pitiful, and it's such a shame that it's just like having the education piece was huge for me. I think that it's hard because we're all given this impression that we're just supposed to intuitively know what to do. We have all this information on the internet. We have all of these, our friend tried this, it worked for them for whatever length of time or whatever it is. But at the root of it, like, there's nothing intuitive about any of this, but taking the time to educate yourself on nutrition, no matter what you choose to do with that information, because again, you have a choice. Once you have knowledge is power, guys. Yeah. Then it really is empowering that you feel confident in your plan. You can be strategic. If you're struggling with something like binge eating, or if you're struggling with just being fucking hungry, with some education, you can be strategic so that you're not hungry anymore and you're still getting closer to your goals. There's so many little things that it helps, even though it does start off as like this math equation a little bit.
I know, and it just sucks. I feel like I think we probably all lived through a level of this of like, oh, I'm hungry all the time, but don't you eat. Like, you better not eat. Like, I'm just going to sit here, like, starving and thinking about chewing my own arm off. And then by the time
fast track to a binge for me.
Yeah, and then, like, the moment the food, you're like, I don't even care what it is. Like, this is happening, and a lot of it's happening. Of, like, even recognizing that. I feel like, I don't know, like, that just comes from, like, 90s diet culture, early 2000s. Like, so much, I feel like we're kind of moving out of that. I hope so too.
I really suck at being hungry too.
I know,
it's just
me
like
too.
Not the move.
Of like that, of just like, losing weight or being healthy means eating less. I feel like I think that we're moving, but again, like, I don't know, my algorithms on social media are all tailored to me and my own opinions. So like, that's my opinion, is that we should be fueling ourselves and not be starving ourselves. So it feels like it's going that way, but that also could be just, my phone in my brain.
A lot of my job is teaching people to eat more.
I know.
Yeah, right, guys?
Everybody's so afraid to eat more.
I would say probably like 8 out of 10 people that come to me, that's like the first thing that we do. So I'm like, listen, we're just going to eat for a while. We're going to make sure that you are healthy, that your gut is working for you. Going to the bathroom is also really important, and it's not uncommon for somebody to come to me and say, I poop twice a week. Girl, like, we need to work on this. This is not a healthy way to live. So a lot of cases, I am actually feeding people more for a period of time, and that's the process that I went through when I started with my coach. When I started with my coach, I was eating 700 calories a day, and I was exercising for 2 hours a day, and I was looking worse. And I thought when I hired him, I was going to spend all this money on him. I was going to buy all the supplements. I thought he was going to teach me how to eat less and exercise more. And he was like, nope.
How could you eat less than 700 calories a day?
Well, I was thinking, I thought that I must be doing something wrong. I must be lying to myself. I must not be tracking it accurately. I thought that there was something that I was missing there. And the biggest thing that I was missing was like learning how to nourish my body.
Yeah. And I just feel like, I've been in that rhythm. I think, you can raise your hand if you want to. How many people have just been like, just starve yourself, like, you just keep eating less? Like, to get to where I need to be, we just have to just keep eating less and less. And it's just like, the food's awesome. Let's go to Chowtown.
But we're always taught that it's eat less, move more.
Yeah.
And it's like, in some cases, it's not. Listen, if you have never, ever dieted before, has anybody in this room never, ever attempted to lose weight or diet? Nothing? Okay, so there's literally not one person in this room who has not tried a diet before. But let's say that there is some like holy grail person that just has never tried to diet before and has weight to lose. That person, totally, you could just eat less and move more. It's going to be simple. But for the majority of us, we're long gone. We're way past that. We need to start learning how to fuel our bodies and to move in an effective way, and that is what is going to propel us forward.
But there's just so much fear around it of like, okay, well, once I allow myself to eat more, I'm going to go into a binge, or I don't trust myself, or I'm going to gain all of this weight. I'm going to ruin all this progress I made. Like, it's just like you go into this very fear-based thing, which kind of goes into Lindsay's conversation earlier today of like how much of this is in your head.
Oh, totally. But and I think that our perceptions of ourselves are skewed as well. I'll be honest, like, I don't think that I could have ever gone through the process of a reverse diet without a coach.
Yeah, same. I mean, I needed you to
Yeah, I
get me
think
to
it
do
would be
that.
a really hard thing to do by yourself because you have to have like that third party perspective, especially when you're assessing progress and making changes. I think it would be I don't think that it's impossible to do by yourself, but I don't think I could have done it.
Well, can I ask you a question? You don't have to answer this. Well, like having weight loss surgery, like I have not had weight loss surgeries, but I know some people that do, but I don't really go into a discussion about it. Like I'm under the impression that you just have to eat this low amount of calories for life now because you have a different sized stomach. Is that like true for your experience? Because you said you're eating more, but does that put you in a point of pain from having surgery?
No. So you know what's so interesting? So initially after surgery, what surgery does is it's forced starvation. So in case anybody wants to understand why weight loss surgery works. But then I've also seen many cases where weight loss surgery doesn't work at all because this person has already been severely under eating. So now they've had 80% of their stomach removed, but they've already been under eating, so it hasn't created any sort of caloric deficit for them. So that is the saddest situation, and I see it a lot. What was my original question here?
Did that affect you though? Like were you saying you needed to eat more?
Oh yes. So after the initial, where your stomach physically can't hold much food, your stomach heals, and your stomach as an organ is something that is elastic and can stretch and all of those things. And so I think that pretty much everybody who's had weight loss surgery is freaked out that they're going to stretch out their sleeve or their pouch. And I don't think that that's a real, I mean, I think you probably could if you worked really hard at it, but I think by nature our stomach is something that is elastic. Can I eat as much as I could in one sitting pre-surgery? Even now, probably not, but could I eat enough to put all my weight back on? Totally. And it still is that, like, I can't sit in one sitting and eat as much as I used to eat in one sitting. But if I were to graze throughout the day, I could throw back a lot of food, like, very easily.
So did your choices in the foods you were choosing, thinking of like macros and things like that, change from having weight loss surgery? Did you look at food differently other than like, were you thinking of it kind of in that, like, I'm coming from a knowledge base of nutrition way, or was it just, this is on the I can't eat list?
No, they give you like such little guidance. They tell you to eat 60 grams of protein and drink 60 ounces of water, which is great advice, like until you can hit that. And then you're like, okay, well, like now what am I supposed to do? And there really is very limited information, and it's not uncommon to see somebody that's struggling with putting weight back on. They go back to their bariatric surgeon, and they're like, yeah, just go back to eating 800 calories a day. And they're like, well, now I'm fucking hungry if I eat 800 calories. Like, because your hunger does like come back and all of those things, and bodies are not meant to operate on those like severely low calorie diets. It's not, I mean, for a short term, for a medical reason, it may serve a purpose. For long term, like, we're not supposed to live that way. And if people want to have a lean body, have a high functioning metabolism, have hormones that are working for you, you want to be able to ovulate, like you gotta eat. And I think that that's something that we kind of forget. And I think that's a big problem in general, not just with weight loss surgery, just with dieting in general. You know, we have all these plans for how we're going to get where we want to go, but we have no exit plan ever. And it's like, well, what happens after the diet? Well, if you're not thinking about what's going to happen after the diet, your results are not going to stick around. And I mean, we all have lost weight before. How many of us have kept it off? That's the hard part.
Yeah,
right? Maintenance is the hard part. So you always have to have that exit plan, no matter, you know, no matter what your path is to get to your goal.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's just like those prescribed sort of weight loss meal plans that I've done before, like it works until it doesn't, because it's like, well, can I do this forever? Well, I couldn't do LA Weight for Less forever because they went bankrupt. So it's like, right? So it's like one of those things of like, yeah, it is technically working until it's like, oh, well, now that's, again, if it has a stop sign and has a finish line, then it's not, that's where you hear the buzzword like lifestyle choices. Like, is this your lifestyle? Are you choosing it? Are you living it? Or are you doing this and to reach a finish line, and then you're going to go to a different way of living, because if you're living a different life, you're going to have different results.
Well, and I think that if you choose to get there in an extreme way, that you need to understand that there are side effects and consequences to dieting in extreme ways, and that, you know, your metabolism is going to adapt, and you're going to have to repair it. And metabolisms can be repaired, which is awesome, but you're going to have to sign up for that next stage of your journey in order to maintain what you've done or to keep making progress. So I think that that's a big thing, that, you know, if you decide to do something extreme, you need to know that it's going to come with some side effects and some downsides, and that you need to be ready for that.
So let's get into that second, since everybody in this room agreed they've been on a diet before. Like, what is that doing to your metabolism moving forward?
So if you eat 1,000 calories, let's say you start eating 1,000 calories.
Or you mean the magic 1,200 calories?
Okay. Oh yeah, 1,200. I forgot that was the number. So if you're going to eat your 1,200 calories, you're going to lose weight, and a lot of people out of the gate will start at 1,200 calories. And the reason that you don't want to do that, and that you always want to just create just enough of a stimulus, is you want most of your weight loss to come from fat loss. There is a difference between weight loss and fat loss. You want to keep on as much muscle as possible. But also, once you get to, your body's going to adapt to that 1,200 calories. So now your next move is to go to 1,000 calories. Then your move after that is about 800. So you're going to have to keep stepping down if you want to keep getting a response. So you want to be always really strategic about how you approach it, because our bodies are adaptable, and our bodies always are going to want to maintain homeostasis as well. So you need to be cognizant of that when you're choosing how you're going to approach your weight loss journey, or whatever your goal is, your muscle gain, whatever your goal is at the time, that you need to always be strategic and play the long game, because we all want to do this extreme thing out of the gate, but you're going to adapt to that extreme thing, and then you're going to be stuck for a while.
So what are the side effects of just jacking up your metabolism? How can you just sit here today and think of yourself of oh, my metabolism is just at a halt or in a bad place?
So let me think. So when I was eating 800 calories a day, I couldn't eat 850 calories without gaining weight. My body was like, holy shit, you're giving me just a little bit of extra food. So I had to be really, really tight. I had zero flexibility or freedom in my life, because every time that I went over that number, it was it just would stick to me like glue. I was tired. My cortisol was at a 30. We can jump into lab work here too. My progesterone was crashed. I couldn't produce testosterone. I was severely insulin resistant as a result of eating so low carb for so long. Trying to think of what else is going on. I was cold all the time. Couldn't really sleep. Literally, it's all connected. Anything you can think that's relevant to your health is going to loop back to.
Isn't it insane that we do this to ourselves?
I know. It's so fucked up.
Right? We've all fallen into that cycle. We've all gone there of you should do this, and you should look this certain way, and you need to eat this, and and we just it's you can't become doing that, and you just literally wreck your own home, you wreck your own body in the process. And we've all lived some level of that. It's just such a bummer.
I know. And I'll be so honest, so much of my journey has totally been about vanity. So much of it. I didn't give a shit about my health. I just wanted to look a certain way. Never did. But until I really started having those negative side effects, then it was okay. And also when I couldn't make any more progress with what I was doing in the unhealthy way, it was all right, well, maybe I should consider this whole health thing. Maybe it's important to feel a certain way and get my period and stuff. And Jason is the one who really guided the way there. And when I signed up with him, I went all in because I was just desperate. I was just I'm working so hard, and I just keep looking worse. But it took me a long time for me to actually care about my health. Most of my weight loss journey, the bulk of losing my weight, I did not give a shit about my health, at all. I just wanted to look a certain way, put on a pair of pants, that kind of stuff.
Same, me too. The beginning of that's why I yo-yoed so much. It was just I knew I want to look this certain way. I want to be hot. I want to be skinny. And it's you're going into it with the I think that we're all guilty, or I would not to speak for everybody, but a lot of us from that sort of level of I want to look this certain way. I want to feel my life, all my problems will be solved if I have this body and I look this way. And then if you do get to a point where you have that, and you're oh no, the same problems are still here. I still hate myself. I still think I look fat and everything. And you're still your brain is so warped at all points. That's why it's so important to get into the mental health aspect of it. Because it's if you got down to your quote unquote goal weight, and you still think that you look fat, and I got to lose 5 more pounds. Again, you're getting into that other cycles. Will it ever be good enough? And I think that's the danger.
I've never hit my goal weight.
Huh?
I've never hit my initial goal weight.
I haven't either.
Yeah,
not the original idealized. And you know what? If I would have hit the idealized number in my head, I would look like I need to be admitted to the hospital.
Yeah,
I would look so sick.
I don't think I'll ever get there either.
But it's you have that in your head, and it's this beacon, and you won't let it go, or a certain pant size or whatever. And then it's then one day if you do get there or get close to there, then you're okay, well now what?
Yeah, this isn't what I thought it would be. I actually had somebody check in last week that she was hit a big milestone, and she was I thought I was gonna feel differently. And I was like, no. But it was just goes to prove that, the amount of weight that we put on our weight is really just such a shame. But it's so ingrained in us because that's what we're told is this is your tracker of success.
And that's why it is important to focus on the health and how you feel. And like those things are important. And that's just living your life. Like you're not living your life according to a number on your genes or on the scale of like, I'm showing up every day and I have energy and I feel good and I'm like enjoying my life and I feel good in my own body. And it's like, well, that sounds like the win right there. Like that sounds like you made it. Like that's pretty badass. Let's do it again tomorrow.
But the time is just the biggest enemy for us all. We're all just so fucking impatient. And I think that that's the hardest part about doing it the right way, about doing it the healthy way is the time part. Because we just want it like now. And God, I had weight loss surgery. Like I wanted it now.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with the time aspect of it. But the people that come to me that are taking that approach of, I'm going to focus on the habits, behaviors. I'm going to focus on feeling good. I'm going to focus on all of these other biomarkers. They're the ones that are the most successful. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's just a matter of time before you get where you want to go. And then you're going to maintain forever.
Yeah. But it's hard to get there for everybody.
But that's not the majority of people.
Yeah.
And I can totally relate because I am the majority. I am impatient. I wish I was like those people that were like, I don't care how long it takes. It's just, I'm going to get there eventually. I've never been that girl, but those are the people that are the most successful. It's the truth.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all like everybody's journey is so different. Where I feel like I was also the very impatient person, did all the things, and then went into over-exercising and everything else too. Like it's like there's all so many different seasons and flavors of the journey too. I feel like it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I am now, where I'm like, I have goals and things I want to do, but it's like to focus on like those health markers and how do I feel. And you're my coach, and we talk about that like this week, where I'm like, I have had trouble falling asleep every day and staying asleep, and I am stressed because I started a new job and I'm doing a major event, and I have never done anything like this before, and my hair is on fire. And so it's like, it's one of those things of like, the biomarkers aren't really looking that great for me this week, but there's also, you got to look at the whole picture and where I'm at, and like understanding, okay, well maybe I shouldn't peg the stress to 200, and then I'll have right. I know I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at that. But it's like I'm looking at it, those things, and we had those discussions rather than being like, girl, the scale's not going down. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? I want to sleep.
But like, so you and I have been working together for almost like 2 years?
The end of 2020. So yeah, oh my God.
So like almost 2 years. And I feel like your whole mindset around your health journey has changed radically since we've been working together. I think that you have kind of crossed over into being like, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to, focus on feeling good. And then the looking good is like, the looking the way I want to look, feeling the way I want to feel. It's like all going to like align together. I feel like you're like in that spot now where you're like,
but it's taken a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm 100% there. I'm working on it still.
Yeah, but that's awesome. You're just honest about it.
You're like 7. Maybe you're 10. I won't care about time anymore.
It all depends on if I'm on my period or not. Depends on what mood you catch me in. But again, it's like one of those things. It's like I'm turning 40 tomorrow. Like it's taken me, that it's taken me 40 years, and I'm definitely not perfection at all. And it's just like even get to a little bit in that mindset of this is something I've dealt with, and I've body image and food and everything since as much as my brain could remember, which is like 6 years old. And then also making this my full-time gig for 2.5 years and being so involved in all of this for years, and how much I just learn and focus on it. And like it's just like for somebody to be like, oh, well, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be like, it's all about lifestyle changes and habits, and I'm not going to worry about how I look. Of like, nah, dude, it's going to take a minute. You're going to cry a lot. It's going to be really hard. You're going to have to build a support system. Like it's just so much. And again, taking it back to the earlier conversation we had with Lindsay today of kind of being your own bully, of like, you go into this spot of like, well, I just suck at this. And you just like start hating on yourself. And it's like, take a breath. This is a process.
And I
It's
think that
hard.
when you're in like the health industry, you have that like extra pressure of like, well, I got to look this way because
Yeah.
this is what I do.
Right?
You know?
But it's just like the conversation of like food and exercise, again, is just so difficult because it is so different for everybody. And there is so much knowledge to know, which is why I want to open it up to questions, because you do have so much knowledge around nutrition. Also,
Okay,
physical
guys.
fitness and stuff
Ready?
too.
Quiz me, let's go.
You're really put on the spot. So if anybody has any sort of like nutrition questions or anything about anything hormone, like she's got the whole hormonal health, all that stuff, we got one over here. Because I know I get questions all the time, and some of these I'm like, oh God, I don't know how to answer this. Sarah, this is Sarah's jam. She does the deep dive.
Hi. So when we're talking about the macros, is there a specific way you would recommend somebody to try and find their numbers?
Okay, so this is so individualized, and by the way, I will totally help whoever reaches out to me if you want to get set up. So first you need to figure out probably if you need to eat more or less, so we can start there. So simple math, well, I should back up a hair. First, you should track what you're eating, just like normally what you're eating, just like so you have an idea of what your intake is. And I would just kind of track calories in that range, you know, where am I at? And if your calories are less than 10 times your body weight, you should probably eat more for a little while. And not, I mean, I wouldn't like add 1,000 calories out of the gate, but you'll walk yourself up slowly through a reverse diet process. So that's if you're eating under 10 times. If you're eating in that like 12 to 15 times, you could probably safely move into a dieting phase. To set yourself up macro-wise, I would start by just tracking your calories, and I would first start by keeping your calories exactly the same and just eating in better balance. So what does that mean? So I would start by taking your protein, and you want that to be about 1.8 to 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. So a simple way to figure that out is take your like goal weight, and that should be what your protein is, essentially. That's like the easiest way to figure out protein. That works for most people, generally. Then from there, you're going to figure out what your carbs and fats are going to be. So you're essentially going to take your leftover calories. So let's say you're going to have 100. I'm going to do this easy math because as much as I am the macro queen, I don't have a calculator in front of me. So, so we're going to eat 100 grams of protein. So that's going to be 400 calories. So you're going to deduct that from your total caloric goal, and then you're going to figure out how much carbs and fats you're going to have. You could stop there, by the way, and you could just track calories and protein, and you can get pretty darn far with that. But if you have performance goals, you probably do want to look at your carbs and your fat a little bit more. I find that a sweet spot for fats is usually in the like 50 to 70 range. And fats, most of us prefer to eat fat. So, you know, you might want to, if you're just getting into it, start with a little bit of a higher fat diet, just because it'll probably suit your preferences and it won't be as much of a shock to you. And then just fill in the rest of the calories with your carbs. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
I will totally, and also, if you go on my website, you can download a free macro guide. That will bring you through all of this. But you can always feel free, anybody, if you want to like message me, I'm happy to answer all of your questions like off the record. You don't have to hire me or any of that. So feel free to ask me questions always.
Well, I also wanted to bring up in the folder, as on Sarah's page, there's a QR code you can scan to get a recipe, because you also have just a stupid amount of recipes within your arsenal.
I think there might be a whole little recipe book in there. You know, I'm not
cool.
sure. Just put it together. So if somebody wants to scan it and let me know when it shows up, that would be great.
I forgot to scan it, so I
think she did like some of the like most like favorite Fit With Me recipes. I think there's like a little compilation in there. I could be wrong though. Let me know, guys.
Does anybody else have any questions? We got one back there. Yeah, because I mean, just even recipes, even if you're not going to follow them to a T, it's just always good to have like new ideas of stuff to make.
And there's tons of recipes on my website. So if anybody ever wants to talk food, I mean, we talk food all day. So I'm happy. If you want recipes to be macro-fied or any of those things, I'm happy to help.
Okay, so I have kind of a two-parter. So I know...
Wait, give me one at a time, though, because I'm totally going to forget this first one.
Okay. So my first one is, I know kind of, at least ingrained in our brain, is the food pyramid, like carbs at the bottom, all that good stuff. So I guess, how would you rearrange that or make a different shape with the foods that we should be intaking on a daily basis?
Okay, so this is, you know what, this is so funny. This is like a graphic I've thought about making more than once, and I've just never followed through on
Please
Canva.
do.
Yeah, you know, I kind of suck in Canva, and I should get better because I really have all these ideas of these images I could make. So most important is going to be your caloric intake. That is going to be your foundation. Second most important would be your protein. And then I would have your carbs and fats. Carbs and fats serve different purposes for different people and things. So I would kind of put them neck and neck. Calories are king. Protein is queen, carbs and fats are kind of floating around down bottom. Then we want to have a big focus on your micronutrients from there. So vegetables are going to be a huge part of your diet. And that is it. That should be your food pyramid. 90% minimum whole foods in your diet. Build balanced plates. Eat a lot of fucking vegetables. Fruit is important too, guys. And then you'll have a pretty balanced idea. And we can make it so complicated and like get into like, you know, weighing everything to the gram, which like a lot of us do, and that's cool. But at the basics of it, you should always be looking for having that balanced plate, making sure that you're eating whole foods. I think a lot of us get stuck into like diet type foods. I have too. But going for like colorful plates and all of those things are important too, because you want to make sure you're getting those micronutrients, those fiber, those vitamins, all of those things as well. All right, part 2, go.
I guess my part 2 would be like, how do you get more fats into your diet? Because I know, like, I love avocados, and I can eat avocados every day. I know it's a good fat, but
sure.
I would like to eat other good fats as well.
So I'll tell you that when people start working with me, I have them track their food for a couple days. Mostly everybody is getting all of their fats from like cheese. I see so much cheese. Cheese should not be a main food group, guys. Just for the record, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, just like a single tear is coming down my cheek right now. Like, you can't, come
the amount
on.
of cheese I see people eat. I mean, cheese not like bad, but it shouldn't be a main food group. So really easy fats that you can have. So egg yolk is a good fat. Avocado, you nailed the nail on the head there. Nuts, seeds, great. High quality oils, olive oil, coconut oil, MCT oil, flax oil is good. And those are and then you can get into like some fattier meats as well. So, you know, if you want to do even like a leaner cut of steak is still going to be fattier than a chicken breast. So you can look into those, and those are the basics as far as fat. Did I miss any fats?
I would say, like, when you're talking about fattier proteins, like chicken thigh. Or just like having a lamb or something like that of like a fattier meat, but nuts.
Nuts, seeds.
Yeah.
Oils. I think that covers the fat bases.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else? Oh, we got one over here. All about food before we go into lunch.
It's like foreplay for lunch.
Okay, so my health doctor told me I have PCOS and really high insulin resistance. She said my body will only lose weight if I eat 50 grams of carbs or less a day. What's your take on that?
Okay, so what's so interesting and what I think is just really shameful is doctors giving out nutrition advice, and I'll tell you why. They take literally 25 hours of nutrition education during their whole schooling, and maybe some have done further education, but that's standard. So for them to give out nutrition advice is like, it makes me so mad because like, I mean, I spend like that much in a week just in like reading in my own education, and I'm like, why are we giving people nutrition advice? So you have PCOS and you know what type of PCOS that you have, so you know that you're insulin resistant. You can also assume that you're estrogen dominant. That comes with the territory here. And everybody's carb threshold is going to be a little bit different. So I would first make sure that you have all of your labs. So I would make sure that you can see how insulin resistant are you? What is your insulin? What's your fasting glucose? What's your A1C? You want to have that information to start. And then I would start having a little science experiment with yourself. So I would get yourself a glucometer, take your fasting glucose, and then take your glucose 2 hours after the same meal, like 2 or 3 times a week. And you could start figuring out what your carb threshold is and seeing what your highs and lows and spikes are. For you to chronically low carb diet is going to bite you in the ass ultimately, because what you can do with insulin, like insulin sensitivity can be restored. New Ethics actually helps quite a bit with restoring insulin sensitivity. GDA max for the win. So it is something that you can be fixed. When somebody tells you that you're insulin resistant, it doesn't mean that it's just like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to be like for the rest of my life. It's something that is reversible. And PCOS is also something that's interesting, that even though it's going to be like a part of you, and me too, by the way, it's something that you can no longer present. Like you can make all the symptoms go away, and then you technically like don't have it. You're prone to it though, right? So I would start messing around with what your carb threshold is. And I would start focusing on I wouldn't go right for like grains and starchy carbs and those kind of things. I would be focusing on things that are more high fiber. So I would be going more in that like fruit vegetable range, because usually fiber will slow that insulin spike. And if you're combining it with a protein, with a fat, it will also slow that insulin spike. So it's about food combinations, and everybody's threshold is going to be a little bit different. So you might have to play around with it, but you can totally make a science experiment of yourself, and start monitoring your glucose, because everybody's going to be different, and then you can start adjusting it from there. You should also know that you're going to be more insulin sensitive around different times of the day. So in the morning, your first meal, I would add some carbohydrates to that meal. Then your pre-workout and your post-workout meal, those are great times to eat carbs as well. So you can start getting a little bit more strategic about it, and then you can start walking it up. I think it's really interesting that doctors are always like, so no carbs, and then you're like, okay, well, what am I left with? Protein and fat, so now I'm gonna eat a shit ton of protein. Well, guess what? If you eat too much protein, or if you overeat on protein, that is going to, through gluconeogenesis, convert into carbs and sugar. So it's all about finding that balance. Is that helpful? Yes. Okay.
That was a lot of information.
I'm sorry. I'll geek out like all day long over this stuff.
Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, we got a couple. Okay. Oh, Jay's gonna. Oh yeah, I was gonna like. Are you gonna run to the back of the room first? Okay. Oh, geez. Okay, move it, Jay. Everybody, cheer Jay on while he runs. Go, Jay, go!
All right. So, what do you do if you have kids and you don't want to be a short order cook?
Wait, I could probably throw this at my clients, because I don't have any kids by choice. But I have a group of clients here that have other humans in their house. Hey, Rhonda.
Yeah, how do you guys do this? I mean,
oh, wait, you got a mic coming at you.
Hi. The meals that I make all come from her database, and they're all, I think everybody can agree, they're normal meals. I mean, my husband eats them. My son, he's a picky eater anyway, but he's starting to eat what I cook, because I don't want to be a short order cook either. But it's nothing like, recipes that have like 20 different ingredients. I mean, you could just do like some chicken, rice, and veggies, and just make it work for your family is what I do.
Well, and I think that you can also enjoy the same meals with your family in a different way. So like I'm not cooking 2 dinners. I don't ask anybody else to cook 2 dinners. I think that's insane. But what I will do, so Mark and I had like steak bowls the other night. So we got some shaved steak from the grocery store. It's one of our favorite meals. Cooked up some peppers and onions. I decided to have mine with some air fried potatoes for my carb. He decided to have it on a sub sandwich. Things that are like assembly at that time type of meals, so like taco type of meals are great, because you can build it the way that you want to build it, and then your kids can build it how they want it. And so maybe my husband is my child. I don't know, as I'm relating to this here, but
well, a great example I've heard before of people having that same issue of like, hey, my kids aren't going to eat this, is that you kind of like build your meals rather than you kind of have like your staples, like your protein, like you're making your meatloaf or your steak or your chicken or whatever, and then the sides can be different of like, yeah, you make a mac and cheese, but the kids eat the mac and cheese and maybe you don't eat the mac and cheese.
Mark's carb is usually going to be different than mine, because he'll usually eat like a more processed carb, and that's his preference. And so I'll have something that's a little bit cleaner, and mostly because it just makes me feel better more than anything.
Yeah, so I think it's just kind of having options without like it being a buffet. And you're going into insane sort of options, so like everybody is kind of like happy at the end of it, is what I've heard other families do, is kind of something as a simple solution.
I feel like if you can agree on a protein and on a cuisine, like just like those 2 things, you know how you're going to season it, then you can like put the other things together to your preference.
Yeah. And then we had a question over here.
Oh. Hi. Can you talk a little more about the blood work and how important that is to kind of set the foundation of the direction that you're trying to get to, versus just jumping right into the macros and the nutrition part?
Totally. Well, so it's so funny. Like I'm big on the lab thing. I always say, I highly encourage, though I do not require lab work. But it's really because I want to make sure that there's nothing going on inside somebody's body that's making this harder than it has to be, because there's so much that you can do when it comes to labs. But with that being said, it doesn't mean that you need labs before you get started on your journey, because there's always going to be foundational things that you need to work on. And then you get the lab work, and then you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm insulin resistant. Maybe I'm estrogen dominant, maybe my thyroid, maybe I have Hashimoto's, so all of those things. So you'll learn a little bit more about kind of how your factory works that way. But the lab work was the game changer for me. Like, first of all, Jason requested my labs, and I had to advocate for my health for the first time, which was an experience. Most doctors are not trained in preventative medicine, so I gave my doctor like this list of labs, and she was like, I have no reason to run these. And it was a big deal for me to like push and get that information. So first of all, I had always been told my labs were fine. Doctor had never even run the appropriate labs, so that's just laughable. But that's what I see all of the time. But when you do a deep dive into your hormones, into your glucose metabolism, into your thyroid function, into how your metabolism works, it's going to give you a huge edge. I mean, and it's your macros and all those things, those basics you can start nailing already, but you can further tailor things to yourself quite a bit once you know what's going on with yourself hormonally, you know? Does that answer your question?
Well, and I think it's one of those things too. It's like we discussed earlier of knowledge is power, and it's kind of you want to know more about yourself, right? And I will say with me, getting all that information from labs, I just sent that in my chart to my primary care, and he's like, okay, whatever, and just like ordered it, and that's how I found out I have Hashimoto's, and that explains a lot of issues that I have. But it was just because I just asked for these extra lab works to understand myself better. And so it's just one of those things of like, oh, I'm just learning information about myself. What do I do once I have this knowledge, kind of like exactly what we were talking about with macros. So I just think of those things of like, especially if you having a hard time with somebody helping you reading them, that you ask somebody who does to like, just so you understand where you are, and then it's up to you what you choose to do with that information. Well, and I think that's a really hard thing too. So like most doctors don't run the right labs, and then they do run the labs, and then they're like, oh, your labs are fine. Like that's it. Like you get like one email from the portal, they'll be like, oh, this is what's going on, one sentence. Here's a medication for that. Like when my clients send me lab work, I did a lab read last night. It was a 20-minute long video where I was like, girl, let's talk about how your body works. And we go through, because it's not about like line by line. Your body works as a whole system. And that changed the game for me. And I think that it's changed the game for a lot of other people, just to learn how to get your body working for you, not fighting against you. And it kind of like explains why you are the way you are in some instances as well, why maybe this is harder for you. It's not all in your imagination that this is harder for you. There's actually something going on. Like you have an autoimmune condition that makes you very inflamed. And so there's a reason why I would imagine probably a reason why this has been a part of your health journey for a long time. Yeah. It is just having that information. Again, I was armed with the knowledge of what I can do about it. It's up to me whether or not I want to choose to live that every day. Mm-hmm. And so I know I feel better when I don't eat gluten, but I also really love gluten. So again, it's having the knowledge and understanding what it is, and then moving forward with that knowledge. And then we had another, did you have a follow-up? We have all the questions.
If you don't have a thyroid at all, is there something different you would do in this? Like, you're on thyroid medicine, but if you, you have Hashimoto's, but...
So you can still get your thyroid numbers run to see where your T3, T4 is, and then you can be strategic about what medication you're on. I find that doctors often will just give out a synthetic T4, like a Levo or a Synthroid. But what the problem that I find in that is that if you aren't converting, so T4 is your inactive form of thyroid, T3 is your active. If you're not a good converter, the T4 isn't going to help you. So you can look into different therapies and medications, and there's a lot more that you can do to optimize your thyroid outside of just T4. I don't know why that's like I think they're like, let me give her T4 and hope she's a good converter. But there's so much more that you can do to optimize your thyroid function. And so I would still get like full labs and see where you're at, see what your T4 is doing. And if you're not converting, you can look into a T4, T3 combo as well. And I'm not a doctor, but this is just what I've seen. Well, I think with that, I always just don't be afraid to ask questions and be an advocate for yourself. If like you're confused and you want to know, then like just ask.
Is that something you do if someone hires you? Will you help them?
I do full lab reviews, and I'm also partnered with a hormone replacement therapy clinic. So any prescription needs I take care of. I work really closely with the doctor, and we work really well together as well. So it is part of the services we provide.
Great, thanks.
You got it.
Yeah, another one up here, Jay.
And after I do your labs, once you get on a call with Chris, our doctor, Elisa can tell you, he'll go through your labs for like an hour. Like you think my 20 minutes is in depth.
I don't know if I missed it, but where can we find the lab work that you're talking about? Because we all get the generic lab work, you're fine.
Shoot me a DM and I can send you the list.
I think that should be on the sheet in the folder. Don't you have a, okay, cool.
Oh, yes, okay.
Awesome. Any more questions? I think we have time for like one more question. If anybody else has a question. Going once. Going twice. All right.
Okay, just like every time we record a podcast, I totally black out. I have no idea what we talked about
I
in
know,
the past
right?
hour. I do that every single time. I have
Hey,
no
guess
idea.
what? Me too. I've done this like 800 times now. I don't know what just happened. But everybody give it up for Sarah.
Thank you, guys.
AmandaValentineBites.com